Mark, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I am very excited about this podcast because, as we talked about earlier today, this directly intersects what I do as an SBA loan broker. So I help individuals start and buy franchises. I've known you for several years, and you are one of the authorities on helping entrepreneurs and franchise owners become successful in their business. And if you could, will you please show the audience your book?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan.
You got it.
Everybody, this book is called Secrets of Franchise Success, The Formula for Becoming and Staying a Top Producing Franchisee. In it is a collection of data that we got from what we call 20% producers, top 20% producers in franchise systems. So not the number ones or the number twos. We spoke to probably about 50 franchisees in 25 different franchise companies. So we did service and product and B2B and B2C businesses. And the collective wisdom of those franchisees is what we put into this book.
Wonderful. Can you describe or provide a caricature of the type of person who's interested in becoming a franchise owner?
Absolutely. First of all, it's usually someone who has thought about becoming a business owner for a good part of their life and have been waiting for the right time, as if there's such a thing as the right time. On rarer occasions, it's what I would consider someone who started to be an entrepreneur and maybe had a business or two and realized that if they wanted to really grow as a business owner, franchising as a methodology would be a great way to do it in a short period of time. So sometimes you get owners who are literally on their third business and are first-time franchisees, or fourth business and first-time franchisees.
And can you talk about the benefits of partnering with a franchise?
Absolutely. One of the keys or secrets in the book is about leveraging your resources.
Yep.
And it means that, you don't have to be in business by yourself and for yourself. You can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself, which means that you have a whole group of people dedicated or should be dedicated to your success. A lot of franchise systems depend on you being successful. That's how they make their money. And that means that they're going to be supporting you in their marketing. They're going to be supporting you in their sales. They're going to be supporting you in the operations and the finances and giving you the extra push or kick in support that you need in order to be more successful than if you were doing things on your own.
And so you talk about what franchises offer their franchisees. Can you now talk about what franchisors do not offer their franchisees, which I believe is the bulk of what's in your book?
Absolutely. And part of the story of the book was to create some sort of space where we're not providing what franchisors provide. We're supplementing what it is that they provide to their franchisees. And there's a few reasons why they don't, and some actually legal when it comes to sort of the managerial things. But essentially, we looked for the 5 secrets, or we looked for secrets and came up with the top 5. And then we took that information and put it into a coaching program, an online coaching program called the Franchise CEO Mindset. And it's really there that we're focused on what franchisors don't provide. And first and foremost, mindset, right? What is a franchise CEO's mindset supposed to be? What's it supposed to look like? Then we focus on the hiring, training, and onboarding. There's some basic elements that franchisors do provide to their franchisees, but because of laws that we have in California and other places, franchisors should and are limited in what they can do to help you. We look at culture. And typically franchise organizations, like many organizations, know what they would like to have as their culture. They often don't have it as their culture, and they don't know how to get it. So we look at what good culture is and bad culture is. And then we focus on management and leadership. And again, for legal reasons, franchisors do a little less hand-holding when it comes to managing your employees.
Got it.
And in terms of leadership, I would say most franchisors struggle with understanding and being effective at leadership. So they're not necessarily the most qualified to help franchise owners become leaders of their own businesses.
Got it. And Mark, you've been so kind as to agree to come back on the podcast at a later date so that we could dive further into your book. But what we both agreed on today is that we would take a deep dive into mindset. And the reason is when I speak with soon-to-be franchise business owners, one of the things that I notice is there is a fear. And that fear starts with a question, Ryan, do I have to sign a personal guarantee? And that's a fear-based question. Why are they asking that? Well, they're asking that because they're asking, well, what if my business fails? Then what does that personal guarantee mean for me? And so it's quite common that these business owners are already beginning with a fear mindset. And so when you speak about fear, can you dive into what you're thinking about, what franchise owners experience, and how, if they're not careful and obviously don't work with someone like you, they can become paralyzed in their fear? And then also bring us through how a franchisee can go beyond the fear and actually have one of your secrets of success.
Sure. Well, the first thing I think it's important to understand is it's universal, right? Fear is universal for business owners. Anybody starting a business is afraid. What differentiates the top owners from sort of the other 80% who are not top 20 is what you do with the fear. And that's really the big difference. And it's also, I think, ways to mitigate fear in business ownership. That's what franchising is designed to do, right? So instead of being an entrepreneur and starting everything on your own, and you learn your own, and you spend the money, and you grow, and you fail, and you grow, and you fail, the franchisor is attempting to reduce some of the risk of failure by providing you with systems that they've proven to work.
Yep.
Right? Which is why they focus on, hey, follow the system and it should work. So one of the ways to reduce the fear is to learn about the system before you get into it so you feel comfortable that you can follow it.
Yep.
And if you don't feel comfortable following their system, you're in the wrong franchise. Or you've chosen the wrong franchisor for the business. Example, there might be 5 commercial cleaning window franchises, right? If you find the one that you think is going to support you best, that's the one, right? And that helps you reduce the fear. Once you're in the business, you've already made the decision, you've signed the paper, you've got the personal guarantee. Oh, no.
That's right.
Now what?
That's right.
And again, the difference between the successful and the non-successful franchisees with what they did with the fear. Successful ones used it as a motivator to be proactive, to take action. In other words, if you're afraid and worried about a decision to make, it's time to make the decision.
There you go.
Right?
Yep.
If you're afraid of anything related to your business, it means make a plan and start to implement the plan that you make.
There you go. That's great. So we also talked about setting goals, and there is a process whereby if you have the goal in your mind, there's one success rate, and then all the way down to if you ask someone to hold you accountable, there's an increased success rate. Can you start us from just in the mind all the way through to holding accountable? Sure.
And let me just back up to this idea of, dealing with fear is putting together a plan and executing the plan. Anytime you set a goal as a business owner, or you set a goal as a father, or you set a goal as a mother, or you set a goal as a worker bee, anything you do, you set a goal. If you set it in your mind and that's where it remains, you have a 6 to 8% chance of achieving the goal. If you set it and write it down on a sheet of paper, you increase your chance between 18 and 22%. If you share the goal with somebody else, you increase the chance between 50 and 60% of achieving the goal. And if you write it down, you share it, and you ask somebody to regularly hold you accountable for progress towards that goal, you increase the likelihood of achieving the goal up to 86%.
There you go. There you go. And you talked about in your book, people that do set these goals and then they persevere through the fear. And can you talk about how you specifically help franchise owners persevere through the fear?
It's the accountability thing we just talked about, right? It's when you say, right, in order to reduce my fear, I'm going to do these 3 things. And you know that you and I are going to be meeting next week, and I'm going to say, what's the progress on these 3 things? And what's prevented you from making progress? That's where we can either explore the obstacles that are getting in your way and what are you doing to overcome them, right? Or encourage you, recognize, right, the value of what you've done, right? Because people like recognition. It's motivating, right? So congratulations, you've done 2 out of the 3 things you said, and you did it in a timely fashion. Yay, you.
Yep.
Right? That makes you feel encouraged and want to keep doing. And a lot of times, right, the successful people find the behaviors they need to do and they keep doing them. And that's what coaching provides, right? An accountability partner to keep you on tracks. So when you say I'm going to do something, you actually do it.
So I come from a background where I played professional baseball, and whether it's baseball, football, soccer, basketball, you can keep going on down the line. Those teams don't just have managers, people that manage the game. They all have coaches. And a lot of times business owners are in the arena, as we say, of business ownership, but they don't have coaches. But that's contrary to what we know, right, from the highest competing professional athletes that makes them successful. What makes them successful is not only their self-determination, an entrepreneur, right, or a franchise owner. They're self-determining, I want to own a business. I'm going to do it with the franchise. But oftentimes they don't have a coach. And why would the top performing athletes have coaches and business owners not have coaches? That doesn't really make sense, does it?
Well, it does if you think that, a business owner doesn't actually have a manager and a leader of a president of the baseball team,
yes,
and the president and the general manager and the manager. And now they're smart enough to know, hey, get you a hitting coach.
There you go.
Right? Get you a hitting coach. You don't know that. And even when you become a franchisee, franchisors have consultants. Sometimes they confuse coaching with consulting, and they're 2 different methodologies. So they'll have a consultant, and consultants are very good at telling you what to do, right?
Yeah.
Whereas coaches are there to help you think and solve your problems so that you can remove the consultant and learn how to think on your own, how to develop your own solutions. And again, unless a franchisor is telling you, hire a coach, right? You're not going to think to have one. Or unless you've been a business owner before and participated in group coaching or working with other business owners to help you solve problems, you're not going to have that exposure. And so you don't necessarily move towards working with a coach because you just don't know.
So it sounds like someone actually has to go seek out a coach.
Yeah.
And if someone's watching or listening, hey, great for you, because I have one sitting right next to me. And that is absolutely the perfect segue, Mark, for you to share a couple of stories, how you started working with someone who maybe wasn't on their way to being successful, but through your coaching, you were able to help them work through the processes of becoming successful.
Sure. So, this is an interesting example because it blends 2 areas in which I work. I had a client, right, who came to me to do some leadership development at a very large organization. And as we were working together, she knew that I also helped people become business owners, and she wanted to own a business and keep her job, right? In order to do both, right, we focused a lot on developing leadership. And I like to look at leadership in 3 areas: leading yourself, leading others, and leading your business. And in this particular case, a lot of it had to do with leading herself. You're going to work full-time and own a business. How's your time management? Right? You're going to work full-time and own a business, right? You need good management skills. You need a group of people working underneath you so that you don't have to quit your day job, right? And so what do? We focused on bringing on great people that would stick around, right? As far as how we did it and work together, she opened 2 locations last time that we had connected. She had a great set of staff, great managers, right? And was leveraging a franchise system and following that process.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. Do you have any other examples of people who maybe came to you and they were unsure? Maybe they were testing the waters. I get people who call me all the time and they're looking at buying a franchise and they're testing the waters. Maybe they don't even execute or follow through. Can you talk about an instance where you met someone like that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna plug the book.
There you go. I love it.
The book says there's 5 secrets, right, that are really important, and you read the book, and they don't resonate with you. Right? Don't do this.
Don't do this. There you go.
Don't do this. If you can find, right, 1 or 2 things that you're like, I could work on this, but I bring to the table some of these other things, go ahead and do this. You know, you asked me just as in the franchise broker industry, how often I will talk somebody out of doing a franchise. I would say 7 out of 10 people.
Wow.
Right? Because they shouldn't.
And what traits are evident when you speak with the people you talk out of pursuing a franchise?
Hard work, perseverance, right? Dealing with setbacks, right? Talking somebody out is like, I don't want, when somebody comes to you and says, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not ideal candidates to be business owners because business ownership is a grind. It requires you to farm, to plant, right? To harvest, to spray for bugs, to keep fertilizing, the ground until you reach a point, right, where your trees are productive. It does happen, but it takes some years. And so if you don't have the 3-4 years to do the grind and people are coming in, I don't want to, hey, don't do it. I mean, and especially what's oftentimes common in it's franchise space and others is people have this dream of owning a restaurant. It's the hardest business around.
And it fails the most.
In
SBA financing.
And it fails the most. So what I'll do is I'll ask people a series of questions, things like, you have a family. Do you enjoy spending time with them? Would you rather not spend time with your family? And so in a series of questions, you can help talk somebody out of a particular business.
Yeah.
Right. And you can even help talk somebody out of business ownership. Yep. Right. And part of that is, most people who are looking at it are going to be in their 40s, 50s, and maybe even their 60s. They've had a career. And so part of it is weighing, why not just stick with finding another job? Because oftentimes it's people who are in that transition stage. And let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of just finding another job versus being your own boss. And a lot of times when it's down on paper, it's easy to see, no, I shouldn't be my own boss.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And you write in the book, whatever owners are complaining about is most often a reflection of what is lacking with the owner.
Yeah.
And so if they go into it complaining, because believe me, if you own a franchise or any kind of business, if you are fortunate enough to be successful, you are going to start complaining about something because you're going to forget why you started in the first place. Yeah. And you go on further in this paragraph to talk about how important it is to have purpose in what you're doing. And if you have that purpose, those things that you would normally complain about, you can compartmentalize them and understand. Just like you'd already said earlier, it comes with the job. It comes with the business, right? So whether it's employees, customers, a drain popping and bursting, whatever that is, there are going to be things that come along with the business that maybe you'll want to complain about. But if you learn how to compartmentalize and persevere through those, that's the greater purpose.
And that and part of it is keeping that purpose right in mind. Like, why am I doing this as opposed to doing something else? And why am I being a business owner anyway? It boils down to, again, the perseverance, a commitment to, okay, I can complain about it and do nothing, or I can complain about it and take action, just like the fear. I could be afraid and be paralyzed, or I could be afraid and do something. And oftentimes, right, as you said, what I'm complaining about is my growth opportunity. I'm not aware that I'm the reason why.
Let's talk about that.
Right? Things aren't working the way they should be working.
I think I'm glad we got to this point, because I think this will be so groundbreaking for so many people who are owning franchises right now. They're at a point where they're discouraged, they're complaining, but what you just said is that's not an opportunity to quit, to shrink back. But what is that an opportunity for? You just said that's an opportunity for growth. That's a horizon that they could shoot for. Can you talk about how to persevere through complaining, discouragement, and break through to a success?
Okay. So I would say that one of the things that separates, right, your top producers, et cetera, is owning their own problems and their own issues. And in order to grow, right, you need a couple of things. One, you need a problem. You need something to complain about. You need to be hitting the wall or hitting an obstacle and needing to go around it. In other words, we don't grow, whether we're business owners or fathers or worker bees. We don't grow when things are same old, same old.
Yeah.
We grow when there's a problem.
And you know what? That's I think of it like this. If there's not a problem, then I'm not persevering through life. I'm not growing in life if everything is just,
That's
what a boring
why
life.
You're a successful
And what a
business
boring
owner,
life.
right?
What a boring life, right?
Right. But you do have a lot of people who prefer the comfort of not changing over the discomfort of change. And that's really what happens, right, with people who aren't successful. They prefer to be comfortable and not have to change, not have to do anything different, not have to look at what can I do differently today that will change the direction of my business. And if I decide I'm going to try something, then I'm going to go after it, right? I'm going to persevere. I'm going to keep trying until I have that breakthrough and it works. And, that's a growth mindset versus a not growth mindset. It's that I see something wrong and I ask myself, what am I going to do differently to change it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so many people you said are complacent. And when you're growing as a person, you're growing in life. And in business ownership, one of the reasons why I wanted to own a franchise is because I saw that as the next step in my growth as a person, my next growth as a business person. And I do own a franchise now. And I'll tell you, there have been a lot of great things about it, but there have been a lot of difficult and challenging things about it. But I wouldn't change that for the world, because I've come through the other side. It took us 7 months to transform the inside, so the physical inside of our business, from one franchise to the other. That meant that I was meeting with contractors. I was on site. That means that I personally, because our insurance company told us we had to, I had to personally trim back about 40 trees from our building because it was a fire hazard. And instead of calling a company to do it, I did it. It took me about 5 hours. I've got a photograph where I'm sweaty and dirty, and I've got calluses. But I looked at that as an opportunity. And now that I'm through the other side, I look at, wow, that was an amazing opportunity. I took the opportunity. And so what I'd like to do, because when someone is listening or watching this, it's because they went into Google and they typed in SBA loans for franchises and they came here.
Right.
And so they're most likely looking to buy a territory or buy an actual existing franchise.
Sure.
And I think what would be most valuable for them would be to make them really uncomfortable right now and make them look inside and ask themselves, who am I? Do I have the mettle or the moxie to get into the ring of franchise ownership, partner with the franchisor, lead a group of employees, satisfy customers even when you get a bad Yelp review, show up one day like me where the entire plumbing backed up and flooded This was like 2 weeks into me owning the business, but persevering through that. Let's make these people uncomfortable. Let's talk about how you begin that process of coaching them. Because I know when I was coached, it wasn't about, oh, Ryan, make you comfortable, but it was, Ryan, you missed your spot by 2 inches. Ryan, that guy's going to hit that out of the yard if you throw that there. So how do you make your business owners uncomfortable at first so they're willing to look at who they are to overcome the weaknesses? Because we all have weaknesses.
You know, it's not really the job of the coach to do it. Usually it's the client who comes to you with an issue, right? Like, what's going on today? And it's very easy to move from this is the issue to explore what's your role in it.
And that's what I'm talking about. You see, you put your thumb on them. That's why I love it.
What did you do or not do, right, that made this happen or prevented that from happening? Why did you do it? In other words, you're as a coach helping people develop self-awareness. And I don't want people to think about, right, that it's all about your areas of growth and development. Part of it is leveraging your strengths and what you're good at.
Good
right?
point.
And what have you done in the past that helped you the last time you encouraged this? If it worked then, why didn't you do it this time, right? So encourage people to keep doing the things that already work for them, right? But again, not being afraid to say, hey, let's look in the mirror.
Yeah,
right.
That's what I'm talking about, by the way.
Let's see, why are we, having these feelings? What is this bringing up, right? What is it telling you about your management skills?
Yep.
What is it telling you about your temperament? What is it telling you about patience? What is it telling you about decision making? And if you don't like what it's telling you, then it's about coming up with a plan to fix it.
Yep. And you talk about it in your book, you worked with franchisees who have high turnover rates. And so what you would say to them is, don't complain about them, because if you have high turnover, that means several people are turning over. It's very unlikely every single one of them has the same character traits.
Yeah.
It's you. And so that's the part where I love what a coach does in making someone uncomfortable. Ryan, when I used to walk guys, because if you look at my baseball reference, I walked a lot of guys. I struck more guys out, but I did walk a lot of guys. That was my fault. That was me not meeting the test.
Right.
And as a business owner, that can oftentimes be the hardest part about owning a business, is looking in the mirror and saying, hey, maybe I'm the reason why I have high turnover. Maybe I'm the reason why we're not getting good Yelp reviews. Now, me, I don't know if I've been trained this way or if it was something I had innately from childhood, but I always took personal responsibility. So I never blamed my coaches. I never blamed my teammates. I always took it upon myself. But I'm sure you see in your practice that people have this self-realization that they're the problem, some slowly, some quickly. Talk about that.
Well, I want to say more importantly than just having that realization is what you just said, which makes which is a characteristic of a great franchisee, is taking ownership. Okay? Because there's two paths that you go when things aren't going well. You either blame somebody else or you take responsibility.
Yeah.
Those who take responsibility tend to do way better than those who blame other people. And when you go back to should you be an owner, I'll ask people, are you more likely to blame somebody for whatever is troubling you, or are you likely to take responsibility?
That's a great question.
Now, a lot of people are uncomfortable answering that.
Because they know the answer, and then they don't want to lie. So the next question is, do you lie or tell the truth?
Well, and that's helping me to think through, don't own a business.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're more inclined to blame, right, the franchisor for what's going on than to ask yourself, what do you need to do differently to fix it? And then, so that's really important. I want people to focus on, taking responsibility. Right? That's huge, because that is a quality or characteristic of successful business owners. So it's not, because people can be self-aware and then not take responsibility. Yeah, it is my fault. And it is my fault, but, and they don't do anything. as opposed to it is my fault. Here are the things I'm going to try and do differently.
Got it.
I want to be a better business owner, or I want to be more effective at hiring. I want to have a better onboarding process. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to expand on what we're doing, see if it makes a difference. And then all of a sudden, I'm keeping people. Wow, look at that.
Yep. They changed.
They've changed.
Yep. And they've learned and they've grown. And that spills over into us in life, not only in business.
Right.
Yeah. What I'd like to do now is to talk about people who are in the beginning stages of buying a territory or buying a franchise territory or acquiring a franchise. They're in corporate America, and on the weekends, they dream of being a business owner. And let's say they're even in the application process, they've secured the territory, or they've signed a letter of intent to buy a franchise business. If they were to come to you, can you tell them right now, in order for you to be successful, never owning a business before, you've only been in corporate America, you've only, like you said, been the worker bee. Can you just walk them through a few steps that they should start doing now to make sure they're not caught unaware when they're actually in the middle of owning the business while sales are declining, while they're worried about their personal guarantee?
Right. So, all right, you're already there in the beginning, and it's not about did you make a good choice or not.
That's right.
Fair
You're
enough.
there.
So you're there. Well, I always say you've gone through the training program, right? How much of that training are you executing? All of it, some of it, a little of it. And if you're not executing all of it, why not? What were you told to do? I mean, this is the beauty of a franchise. They tell you what to do, so you don't have to do a lot of thinking when it comes to sales, marketing, and operations. What did they tell you to do that you're not doing it, and why? And typically, those less successful people have a list of things that they're not doing.
They're not doing.
So check the list of things you're supposed to be doing. You've got an operations manual. Have you memorized it? Do you know everything in there? Do you understand why it's in there? Are you executing on their plan? The other thing is, and again, this is a timing difference, and depending on the kind of company that you get into, if you're new, right, do you have any employees yet? Or you've got your one key employee, or you 3 employees in, et cetera. Well, I always tell people, right, you need a plan and you need an org chart because you need to be working towards something or somebody, right? So if I said, Ryan, you have an org chart, you'd be able to say, yeah, I got 50 employees. I know where it is. I said, but Ryan, have you got an org chart for 5 years from now?
There you go.
And if I ask new owners, right, do you have well, I say this. Before somebody actually gets a franchise, if I'm working for them, they have an org chart before they go to training.
There you
right?
go.
They know what they're going to be working towards so that they can go into training and tell the franchisor, hey, these are my goals. I have them do a mission statement. I have them do a vision statement. I have them do an org chart for 3 years and 5 years down the road. And I have them do job descriptions for everybody on that org chart, right? Again, it's about having a plan, having an outline, putting it on paper, sharing it with somebody else. That makes it that much more likely it'll happen.
And so you just mentioned something that is so important. I'm glad we flushed it out, is that oftentimes when people are applying for a loan to, again, start a franchise or buy one, their vision is just like when you're driving. It's only what is right in front of you. But you just brought up an amazing point to project that vision. So you got to keep your eyes on the road. We all know that. But then, when we're driving and let's say we're going with our family, where is our mind wandering to? Our eyes are on the road. Where are we headed? And you just brought up something that I think most business owners probably are not doing, is though their eyes are on the road, they're not projecting out to what they want to see in the business 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
Right.
And I love that you just fleshed that out as a first step, right? As a building block, as a framework for a franchise owner to not only look at what's right in front of them, but where do they want to go? What do they want to become? And you also brought up something that I think I could have a tendency to be this way. So I'm just going to say that. And you probably see this, that when people, and this is specific for franchises, you said when I asked you, what would you counsel someone to do right away? And what you said is, are you following the training that you received? So, and you can tell me what you think about this, but what do you think is the right approach to bring all of my good traits to the franchise, but then also being willing to learn and to consume all of the good traits of the franchisor, instead of coming into the franchise and saying, hey, I like a lot of what you do, but I'm here to teach you. Do you ever work with people like that? And what's
all the time, and they're usually not very successful.
That's right. They're not successful. So what part of, and I think this would be a great way to close it out. What part of me as a franchise owner should I bring? And what part do I need? Hey, I'm just going to check that at the door.
Curiosity is what you need to bring. You need to bring curiosity. You need to be asking open-ended questions to understand how the business is done and done well. And curiosity, right? Focus on those top 20% producers in the system. They are a veritable gift, right? They have tons of information and that's the leveraging resources, right? You've got people who are successful. Spend time with those who are successful. Ask questions, right? When we look at some of the great leaders of companies, right, and we can turn to Jim Collins for Good to Great to see what are some of those characteristics. We know it's humility, humility, curiosity, right? I may know, but I may not know. Right. And I want to know more, so I'm going to ask a lot of questions. So it's not about what you bring to the table when you come in. It's how much you're open and willing to learn and develop and grow. And that's what you need to be focused on. And as we, sort of segued, if you don't start with that vision of what you want in 10 years from now, it's really hard to get there. And so having that, why am I doing what I'm doing? Purpose. And having that, this is what I want my employees, my spouse, my kids to know, right, that I'm doing. I want this vision for myself and my business later on, without starting with those two, right? You're kind of like a blind man without a guide, right? And we can provide those for ourselves if we just take the time to do that early on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this has been so good. And like I said, I always just think about those people who are getting into franchise ownership. They've been in corporate America, and again, they're so focused on just, can I get the loan, right? People ask me, am I going to get approved? And that's all they're thinking about. But it's like, hey, after this, guess what? You have to run a business. You have to hire employees. You have to satisfy customers. You have to keep, for some businesses, you have to keep inventory. For other businesses, you have to keep appointments, right? You have to be a service provider. You have to react. Right now, for example, we're seeing cataclysmic shifts in the markets because of political decisions. And so if you just bought a franchise that is directly affected within the last 3 months, how are you reacting to that?
Right.
And so what I'd like you to do now is talk about your course. Where can we find your course? And how will this course help people from, again, buying a territory, they're already committed, they're in, right, or buying an existing franchise and being successful? Right.
So the nice thing that I say about the course is we're really a supplement to what the franchisor provides. Okay, so the course isn't about sales and marketing and operations. It's about mindset, hiring, training, onboarding, building a culture that you value and your employees value, and it's about management leadership. So that's the 4 parts. There's 4 courses. Each of the course has a series of modules. Okay. The course is called the Franchise CEO Mindset. So you find it at franchiseceomindset.com.
Great.
The nice thing about the course is there's 2 ways of doing it. One is just sort of a self-guided. You pay, you do it. You always have access to the course for the rest of your life. There's 33 tools or PDFs to download to help you manage through each of the modules in the course. So we've got a lot of tools for business owners. And again, you don't have to start in the order in which, right, they go. But I recommend starting with one because one is mindset. And that's where we say it all starts from when you're setting up, right, your business. What's your vision? What's your mission? And then how are you going to deal with some of these things around fear, decision-making, time management? So I do say start with one. After the first course, you could go to the third, the fourth, the second, whatever. And again, you have access to it. The second way of doing this course is to actually have a coach, myself or someone that I work with, as you go through the course to hold you accountable. As we talked about, accountability is the difference between a 6 to 8% chance of achieving a goal and an 86% chance of achieving a goal. So the course is out there. It's available to folks. It's supplemental. And we typically say, it isn't something necessarily you want to do when you first get into a business because you are literally swallowing from a fire hose that the franchisor provides. So focus on their stuff. It's really after the first or second year that this course is its most valuable to you, right? When you've absorbed everything from and now you're trying to implement things, right? And need greater accountability and need some resources in particular areas that the franchisors don't provide.
Mark, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. I hope this helps those who are watching and listening. And if they're not already working with you in some way, I hope that they will consider that. And then also, thank you for providing access to your course so that they can go online, take a look at it, see if it's right for them. And I appreciate you agreeing to come back because we're going to dive into other chapters of the book and really, again, provide that support for franchise business owners.
I look forward to it. I've been around for 21 years now, and what we can do to help small business owners actually moves the economy and our people in the right direction. And that's what we really need more of, small business owners to build something that we can all be proud of.
I couldn't agree more. Mark, thank you so much, and you have a great day.
Thanks, Ryan.